I want you to think back to the first time you ever played Smash.
Whether it was at your friend's house, a birthday party, with your siblings or cousins or whatever, you can probably remember the kinds of characters who would tend to win. Maybe it was a big body like a Bowser, Donkey Kong, or Ganondorf, spamming their gigantic, powerful attacks just hoping they would hit, and eventually, in the chaos of free-for-all battles with items on, they would. Maybe it was a Kirby player, spending all 5 of their jumps to go as high into the sky as possible, only to plummet with rock, literally cannonballing into the fray and sending everybody flying. In that type of environment, I think characters like Sheik and Peach might have suffered. How exactly are you supposed to compete when your little forward tilts and needles and turnips are doing single-digit damage while these guys deal like 20 with one button? How are you supposed to survive when they can tank hits until nearly 200%, and you have to worry about dying to their huge smash attacks or special moves at like 50. It's enough to make you feel like the underdog every time you lock in on the character select screen and another game loads up. For anybody making the leap from casual play into the deep end that is competitive Melee, one of the most jarring realizations is that this dynamic gets flipped entirely on its head. According to the most recent official community tier list, Bowser and Kirby are the 2 worst characters in the game, while characters like Fox, Falco, Sheik, and even Jigglypuff, an explicit joke character, are among the top tiers. Today, let's dive into what makes a character an underdog in competitive Melee, and why the characters you probably remember dominating in casual play are actually so bad that it's an event whenever they show up and win at tournaments. Hey, thank you so much to Raycon for sponsoring today's video. With the Winter Olympics this month, there is no better time to get inspired, push harder, and upgrade your workout routine. Raycon just sent me their new Essential Open Earbuds, and I honestly really like them. I've been using their bone conduction headphones for my cardio the last couple of months, and I'm a fan of these open headphones too for similar reasons. Their open ear design doesn't block out everything around you like regular earbuds do, it's got great battery life, and they're lightweight and not uncomfortable at all during long sessions. But my favorite feature is the multi-angular hook, which lets me switch between my phone and laptop without having to repair the device every single time. You can connect to multiple devices at the same time and seamlessly switch between them with practically no hassle. That is just rad. These also come in a bunch of colors and are pretty affordable, all things considered, so I would check them out. Anyway, the Essential Open Earbuds are here to help you go for gold, so click the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/turndownforwaltopen to get 15% off. Thanks again to Raycon for supporting the channel, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Like most low tiers, Bowser and Kirby don't really have any winning matchups against the top tiers that dominate Melee brackets. They're the worst characters in the game after all, so that just makes sense. But these guys don't just have losing matchups. There are some who think their matchups against the top tiers are literally unwinnable, assuming the top tier player is on their game at all. So that raises the question, what actually is the worst matchup in Super Smash Bros. Melee? Bowser was pretty easily the worst character in the game according to the most recent official tier list, although recent developments that we'll talk about in a bit have had some considering moving Bowser up and moving Kirby down to the worst character. Fox, meanwhile, is the best character. That's debated a little more in the height of the 20XX era, but nevertheless, he has topped the community tier list since the 8th iteration in 2006 all the way through the 13th and latest iteration in 2021. You'll see the occasional argument that Falco or Puff or Marth may be better, but by and large the consensus remains that Fox is the once and future GOAT. That is mostly because these characters are either constantly winning majors or at least challenging for the crown on a regular basis. Kirby, meanwhile, hasn't placed better than 25th at a major since the legendary Triple R placed that number at Smash and Splash 2, thanks in part to a 2-1 win over Dan Salvato in round 2 pools, the same Dan Salvato that made Doki Doki Literature Club. Bowser? He didn't even reach top 64 at a major until 2024. That Bowser placement was thanks to Heavenly Bruised Pelvis at Tipped Off 15. This Bowser player from Massachusetts made history at the long-running Georgia tournament, which earned the Super Major classification thanks to over 500 entrants, including many of the world's top players. Now, this tournament is better known for being the first time Hungrybox finished outside of a top 8 in over a decade, but Heavenly, who has also entered as Heavenly Sunflower, Load Spiller, and a few other tags, became the first Bowser player to ever reach top 64 at such a stacked event. That placement alone should really show you just how hopeless the Melee landscape looks for the King Koopa. It took 20 years and hundreds of major tournaments, all featuring hundreds to even thousands of players, to finally earn one singular top 64 finish. For most stream viewers, Heavenly's sets were probably the first time they had even seen the character in a competitive set. So with that in mind, Fox versus Bowser must be absolutely miserable, right? Bowser is slow, big, has has a terrible recovery and has weirdly stubby hitboxes despite being so big. But he does have two things going for him. He has an absolutely broken get-up attack, and he has one of the best out-of-shield options in the game with his up B. That second one is really important against Fox, by the way, who needs to get in close to start his offense. Even though a lot of Fox's aerial approach options are theoretically safe on shield, the Bowser player can just start letting up B rip early and use those 5 frames of invincibility on the up special to counter aggressive options. On Fox's end, while his fall speed enables a lot of the offense that makes him the best character in the game, it means that even a character like Bowser, usually restricted to hitting low-impact two-piece combos at best, can take a single hit pretty far against Fox. While Bowser is still rarely getting more than 2 or 3 true combo hits in a row, he gets a ton of reward from forcing Fox off stage, where his relatively large aerials and great ledge presence thanks to that insane get-up attack can lead to some early stocks. This dynamic is part of why Fox doesn't incur the same kind of rage that many of the other top tiers in the Smash series does. Well, at least not as much. Part of what made Meta Knight and Bayonetta so infuriating, and a huge part of what currently makes Steve so infuriating, is that their disadvantage states are so difficult to take advantage of. Fox's neutral and advantage are just so strong that he can still be the best character in the game despite turning into combo food whenever he's hit and having a linear recovery. And not to get all, a skilled Roy can beat any Fox on you, but this dynamic gives strong players a real chance against maybe weaker Fox players, even in matchups that the tier lists say should be impossible. Now, does Bowser win? Most people wouldn't think so, but Heavenly Bruised Pelvis disagrees. Despite the fact that he hasn't been around on the Melee Major scene since 2024, his run at Tipped Off remains the best we've ever seen from a Bowser player, at least in the singles bracket. If anybody has the credentials to disagree, it's him. In a documentary Woostoons made on the rise of Bowser in the post-Slippy era, Heavenly said it. He actually thinks Bowser beats Fox. Okay, cool. This is far from a consensus opinion, even among Bowser players, but when you watch Heavenly play the matchup, you can kinda see it. At the very least, watching him beat good players consistently makes it hard to believe that this matchup is 90-10 like a community matchup chart suggested back in 2023. It's pretty funny looking at the results of this survey, by the way. The most common result from Fox players was that they beat Bowser 100-0, which would imply that it would be literally impossible for a Bowser player to beat a Fox player if they were quote-unquote equally skilled. Same goes for Falco, and given that Heavenly capped off his run at Tipped Off with a win over top 100 ranked Falco player Billy Bo Peep, I think it's pretty safe to say that's not the case either. Sometimes you get matchup checked against low tiers, sure, but a 100-0 matchup should be so overwhelming that knowledge should barely matter. The reality is, odds are very few of the respondents to this survey had any relevant experience against an actual competent Bowser, so they just said to themselves, this character is awful and mine's great, so it must be 100-0, I guess. Does this throw the entire concept of tier list into question? Not at all, I don't think, at least. There's a reason why tier lists are all over the internet. It's harder to find something that can communicate more on a topic in less real estate than a tier list. In Melee, you can boil down interactions between 26 characters and the resulting 676 possible matchups into one singular image. Boom, there it is, it's literally right there, that's it, tier list. Tier list, tier list, tier list, tier list, tier list, Melee, fully explained, we're done, we did it. They say a picture contains 1,000 words, well, the transcript of the YouTube video where Hungrybox explains his most recent Melee tier list is over 6,000, so there you go. Tier lists are only able to accomplish this insane efficiency of communication where 6,000 words can be boiled down into a single image by cutting a few corners. As Hungrybox says at the end of his video, this is roughly where I would put everyone. There is far more nuance to be had in a Melee discussion than is possible to be contained in the tier list format. When it comes to starting discussions, tier lists are amazing. They do a great job of taking snapshots of the meta and laying out general opinions on characters, but they're not really designed to answer specific questions like this. When talking about major tournament viability, which tier lists usually are measuring, it doesn't really matter that characters like Sheik and Peach are better at oppressing Melee's worst characters. The only time that matters is when somebody as dedicated and talented as Heavenly comes up. Bowser hasn't really been a relevant matchup for anybody since he last entered a major in 2024, and wasn't for 23 years prior to that. Meanwhile, Fox has the best matchups against the most relevant characters out of Melee's cast, and you'd much rather have his matchups against the top tiers in exchange for having to work slightly harder against bad characters you'll rarely see anyway. So he goes up here, and they go down here. Here? This is where the subscribe button goes, to that. Okay, back to the question at hand. What is actually the worst matchup in Melee? It's tempting to assume the answer includes at least one character that's considered bottom tier, but it's worth considering a matchup that we actually see relatively often in high-level play. Peach versus Ice Climbers. Okay, here comes the Armada Glaze Power Hour, but there's a reason why Armada continued to play Peach into the Ice Climbers well after he had already mastered Fox. There are two big things that you have to do to win the Ice Climbers matchup. Break up the climbers and kill Nana early, and more importantly, do not ever get grabbed. Peach's down smash and aerials are both great at separating Popo and Nana, and her floatiness and her literal float mechanic let her hover above the inevitable grab attempts from the climbers. The Ice Climbers are a solid character, but they're not a well-rounded one. They rely on a couple of overwhelming strengths to win, and if you can remove one of them, like their powerful grab game, there's not that much that separates them from Melee's have-nots. Mewtwo King, who is more known for his Marth, Fox, and Sheik than his Peach, would actually opt to go the Princess in this matchup. There's a classic set from a tournament called Bar Wars from 2013 where Mewtwo King met up with Chudat's Ice Climbers in Grand Finals that really shows off why. And Mewtwo King, I know you're in the comments, you're gonna write something, so I'm just gonna get in front of this right now. What's up? Hey, you can go like Jason's comment, he's gonna write something, I'm sure of it. After striking to FD for game 1, Mewtwo King opted to select Peach and won pretty easily. He then switched to Marth and lost. With the counterpick advantage, Mewtwo King decided to go Fox and take Chudat to Pokemon Stadium, where he lost twice, sending the set into a bracket reset. Mewtwo King had seen enough and switched to Sheik, which barely worked in game 1 and didn't work in game 2. Finally, he went back to the Peach and kind of easily won the set, taking the final 2 games by a combined 5 stocks. Now, obviously, that set was from 2013. The meta has progressed in the past decade and changed, but this matchup still kind of remains a problem. User Kaio Nintendo on Reddit actually calculated the frequency with which each Melee character has reached a major top 8. There are 10 characters that have appeared in at least 2% of those tournaments. And I'll show the graph. There you go. In this group, Peach versus Ice Climbers is certainly the worst matchup. As a result, I do think it's pretty safe to say it's the worst matchup you're likely to see on a professional Melee stream. The community chart agrees as well. It's the only matchup among the top 10 characters that the community agreed was bad enough to be 70-30 in one character's favor. But the worst overall, with the other 16 unviable characters included, there's just no way, right? There are 42 matchups that the community rated as worse than Ice Climbers Peach, which is only 6.2% of the total. Most of those involve Bowser or Kirby, the two characters that the community pretty much agrees are the worst in the game. But just like with Bowser and the Spaceys, people who haven't experienced high-level Kirby play like we used to see from the likes of, say, Triple R, assume the low tier must hard lose to the top tier even when there are aspects of the matchup that genuinely favor the bad character. For example, the community also labeled Captain Falcon versus Kirby as 90-10. And in fairness, this is probably a pretty bad matchup for a lot of reasons, but in practice, Falcon is probably Kirby's easiest high-tier matchup. Kirby's low crouch makes finding falling aerials and grabs pretty difficult, and Kirby's multiple jumps and incredible back air make him more than capable of converting edge guards into stocks. Because of all the various ways in which Kirby doesn't really function, absurd weak hits on his smash attacks, a back throw you can wiggle out of before it finishes, the list goes on and on. It still isn't winning for Kirby like the matchup would go on to be in later iterations of the series, despite Kirby remaining a low tier. It's just that a lot of the things that make Falcon a high tier character don't really work against this. Why? This kind of dynamic makes me assume that the number of matchups that are actually worse than Icy's Peach is a good bit less than the 42 from the community chart. In order to actually find the worst matchup out of all of them, I think we have to look at one of the two characters on the winning side, Sheik and Peach. Out of the top tiers, Fox, Falco, and Falcon all have 2 linear and exploitable recoveries for any matchup involving them to truly be the worst, at least in my opinion. Jigglypuff at least dies at kind of low percentages. Watch any matchup between Don't Test Me's Roy and Jigglypuff to see what I mean there. And there are some pretty silly early kills available in the Bowser Puff matchup as well. Quite literally, every single character in the game can do a tech called the Marth Killer. I find it particularly funny that the example for the tech on Smash Wiki features a Kirby performing it. He still gets bodied though, don't get it twisted, but like, Marth can't have the most lopsided matchup in the game because he has a tech named after him dying. That's just all the way it is. I said it and it's law. That's all. That's it. We're done. Okay, moving on. While the Sheik and Peach don't quite have the strengths against other top tiers that Fox has, their toolkits make it much harder for low tiers to make upsets. Peach is by far the floatiest high tier character, and she just rises above combos and hovers over any low tiers that need their grabs to get things going. More importantly, a lot of the worst characters in the game struggle to deal with crouch cancel, and this is a death knell against Peach, who is always ready to let a CC down smash rip. Against Kirby, a single Peach down smash can kind of leave him at kill percent. Against Bowser, it can leave him off stage with very little chance of successfully recovering. Melee is chock full of interactions where players can get punished for successfully landing a hit. The threat of crouch cancel forces players to structure their offense around it. Top tiers tend to have strong options that can beat crouch cancel, say Fox Shine, Falco Dare, Puff Drill, strong grab games to bypass it entirely, or both. This is a huge reason why Roy is so much worse than Marth, and a huge reason why Bowser and Kirby are so lost against certain characters. You know the matchup is bad when hitting the opponent still makes you lose. Sheik's down smash isn't quite as crazy as Peach's, but she also gets insane reward off of crouch cancel while also possessing a recovery that most bottom tier characters can't do much to mess with. She's a little more vulnerable than Peach if she gets opened up, but with Needle, she can play a keep away game for pretty much as long as she wants. That was the matchup awaiting Heavenly Bruised Pelvis on the main stream at Tipped Off in Losers Top 64. And I'll just let some of it play so you can see it for yourself. Actually, no, I won't. Let me tell you a story. There's a hilarious story from way back in 2014 where Mewtwo King actually technically lost the Sheik Bowser matchup as Sheik. And once again, Jason, I know you're in here, so you better buckle up, bro. Mewtwo King was so confident that this matchup was literally unwinnable that he made a bet with a Bowser player named Beanwolf. He said he'd give up the set if Beanwolf could hit his Sheik a single time with Bowser on Final Destination. You should really watch this Melee Stats video on the set if you want the whole story, but long story short, Beanwolf won the set in probably the most dramatic yet hilarious fashion imaginable.
Mewtwo King can't even perish in hell because he just lets... Yeah! Oh my god!
Yes, no JV5, yes.
Okay, back to 2024 and Tipped Off. The man piloting the Sheik against Heavenly was Dreffin, one of Melee's longest active top players and one of the best Sheiks in the world since the 2000s. How did it look? Okay, now I'll let it play, because it looked like the worst matchup in the game. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad, yeah. Heavenly took 4 stocks across 3 games as Dreffin dismantled the Bowser in a set that took under 10 minutes from start to finish. Heavenly, unfortunately, just couldn't get anything going, and Dreffin got tons of grabs and took them as far as he could. Unfortunately, that's kind of the matchup. With so few tools, you just have to guess right an unreasonable amount of times to expect to guess right against a top player, especially one that has as much experience as Dreffin.
Yeah. Nice use of the sweet spot, and that's going to do it.
But hey, out of 676 possible matchups, one has to be the worst, and it definitely gives us something to root for. Just look at the comments section on the Heavenly vs. Dreffin set. I see Bowser, I click, can we fly this guy out to every tournament, please? Go Bowser, all hail King B, let's get it. People love this kind of stuff, because even if it feels like we know what's going to happen, there's always that lingering question in the back of our mind. What if? Given the lack of data and the fact that people understandably don't often play low tiers that deep in bracket, we just don't have the data to say for sure which matchup is the worst. It might be Peach Bowser, it could be one of Kirby's awful matchups like, again, Peach or Sheik, or maybe there's Marth, even though Marth killer? No, whatever. There's a world where a weird character like Ice Climbers with a really polarizing attribute beats a low tier even harder than this because their weaknesses never really come into play and the Icy strengths get to run wild. But for my money, given what we saw with Heavenly's run, I think there's a pretty strong case to be made that Sheik Bowser is the worst matchup in the game, even if it might not be the matchup between the very best and very worst characters in it. But what do you think? What's the worst matchup in Melee? Or if you play a different Smash game, what matchup do you think is the worst in that one? If you like this video, let me know and make sure you subscribe, and maybe I'll turn this one into a series, maybe. I don't know. Thanks for watching. Big thank you to Avishua Stein, Bobby Wasabi, Brent Mukai, Carter Roberts, Dark Genix, Eric is Cool, Gustavo Cantu Fernandez, James Fabman, Justin Duncan Mills, Kyle Carlin, Marshall Bradley, and Sam Wright.